summits without the participation of those who will truly feel the effects of those decisions. And that's the way things are done, to benefit only the few and not everyone.
We need different types of exchange with the world. We need talks that benefit countries that are developing. We need the Mercosur. We need to have ties with Latin America, and that's not on the G20's agenda.
Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban is at the People's Summit in the center of Buenos Aires.
We are outside the National Congress. This is where the People's Summit is taking place, as an alternative to the G20. It is both a rejection of the presence of 20 of the world's most powerful leaders, but also a platform for the struggles of the people in this difficult situation that we are experiencing in our region. There are 16 different events taking place, including forums, debates, and radio broadcasts, in the many tents that have been set up here in the square. And these are being organized by a range of organizations, trade unions, human rights bodies, and social movements. And all these will come together in a major demonstration on Friday afternoon as part of this opposition to the G20 summit. However, Buenos Aires has been effectively militarized, with more than 22,000 troops virtually closing the city down, as well as 5,000 security personnel who came with the different leaders' delegations. That demonstration will go ahead. There is a public holiday, and public transport has been banned from running, including trains, buses, and the metro. Port traffic has also been suspended, and most of the region's airports have been closed and taken over by the military. At the end of the day, the People's Summit is planning to release the document condemning the G20 and putting forward a people's alternative, including topics like economy, the environment, human rights, the state, and society. A platform saying no to both the G20 and the International Monetary Fund.
Thank you, Edgardo, for that report. Moving on to Mexico, outgoing President Enrique Peña Nieto has made a farewell video ahead of the swearing-in of Andrés Manuel López Obrador on Saturday. Peña Nieto's final act as president is the signing of the renegotiated U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, formerly the North American Free Trade Agreement, at the G20 summit. López Obrador takes office on Saturday, and on the same day, the official Los Pinos presidential residence will become a cultural center open to the public. Corruption scandals have engulfed the Peña Nieto administration as the president's time in office come to an end. Let's take a look at some of the scandals that marred his administration.
After 6 years in power, the popularity of outgoing President Enrique Peña Nieto has fallen to its lowest levels.
The value of the currency has plummeted. There is corruption, murders. The murder rate is through the roof.
If those in charge are corrupt, if the president is corrupt, then so will any policeman on the street.
Corruption cases have been popping up one after the other. The most notorious had to be the one over the so-called White House, which came to light thanks to investigative journalism.
What was meant to stay hidden is a home worth $7 million, which was bought for President Peña Nieto and his wife. A contractor friend of theirs built it, and he also received a lot of money that came from public funds through a call for bids for public works.
2 years later, the shadow of the White House seemed to follow the president. In an attempt to overcome that crisis, he asked for forgiveness from the people in a speech during the launch of the nation's anti-corruption system.
I have felt the anger of the Mexican people in my own skin. I understand it. Therefore, with great humility, I ask forgiveness. I am sincerely sorry for the indignation I have caused.
Despite his apology, though, governors from his own party continued to be embroiled in corruption scandals. Out of the 19 who took a picture with the president after his 2012 swearing-in, 10 ended up in jail or fleeing justice.
Pre-governors were known as viceroys, who could do as they pleased inside their states.
There was constant misuse of public funds during the administration of Enrique Peña Nieto. According to a different media investigation, the government reportedly signed multi-million-dollar contracts with shell companies. The government's image, no doubt, became even more tarnished after accusations surfaced against the former director of state oil company Pemex, who allegedly received a $10 million bribe from the Brazilian construction company.
The level of structural corruption shows how much the state has been overrun by organized crime. This has been happening for decades now. Money laundering and tax evasion have hurt our economy to an incredible degree.
This rampant corruption by public officials resulted in over $16 billion in losses. And just like most crimes in Mexico, the rate of impunity surpasses 90%.
Overcrowding in makeshift camps in the city of Tijuana has sparked fears of health crisis among migrants and medical teams. Thousands of migrants are using portable toilets set up just meters away from where they drink water and children play. To reduce the risk of an outbreak, doctors are offering vaccinations and are treating sick migrants.
Bad, very bad.
Are you worried?
Very, because with children it is horrible. It's very dirty. That's why we try to keep it clean out here.
Epidemics happen in conditions such as this. Our job here is to stop this from happening. We have a vaccination program. We are doing this now and yesterday and today we started vaccinating against chickenpox, even though it's not serious. We are still going to vaccinate all children here in the shelter.
And faced with what could be weeks or months before making entry into the United States, migrants must decide whether to try to stay and work in Mexico or to head back home. On top of worsening hygienic conditions and recent aggressions by U.S. border agents, insistent rainfall in Tijuana has made the migrants' stay more difficult than before.
Many of us are sick with asthma, and you can sleep well. Food is scarce, and instead of us sending money to our families, they are sending money to us in order to eat, which is unfair. So I'm not going to risk my life to get somewhere where I have no one, when getting there is so dangerous, so I'd rather go home.
A judge in Honduras is expected to pass sentence in the coming hours on the suspected murderers of Berta Cáceres. The family of the environmental activist and indigenous leader have called the trial a sham and are calling for a retrial. They say the court concealed dozens of pieces of vital evidence and protected those who ordered the killing. 8 men, including military officers, are accused of carrying out the murder of Cáceres in 2016. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Moving on to Ecuador, protests continue as students demand their right to education, which is at risk in the country. Students are marching on a National Assembly, which is currently debating the 2019 budget. They are demanded that the administration comply with the Constitution and invest 0.5% of GDP in education and health. The progressive increase hasn't appeared in the proposed budget, meaning education will receive $375 million less than in 2018, and healthcare will receive $194 million less. The Ecuadorian Ombudsman's Office has spoken out about the situation of former Vice President Jorge Glass. In light of Glass' poor health, they have urged the judiciary to decide on its position with regard to his medical attention. Glass has been on hunger strike for over a month to bring attention to the inhuman conditions he is being held in, as well as what many call the political persecution. And Bolivian President Evo Morales has urged Ecuador to take better care of Glass' health. On Twitter, Morales said that political differences should be left behind when there is a life at risk. Brazilian President-elect Jair Bolsonaro has appointed Luis Antonio Nagba Garcia, the leader of a right-wing farmers' organization, to his cabinet. Garcia's organization protects the interests of landowners and has been accused of violent attacks on advocates for land reform, such as the Landless Workers Movement. Early in the day, Bolsonaro met with U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton in Rio de Janeiro. This is the first high-level meeting between the U.S. and the new Brazilian leader. The meeting was attended by Bolsonaro's future National Security Advisor and Defense Minister, both of whom come from an army background. Bolton said he's preparing the ground for a meeting between Bolsonaro and U.S. President Donald Trump. And the governor of Rio de Janeiro State, Luis Fernando Pessoa, has been arrested on accusations of bribery in the Petrobras case. Pessoa is accused of receiving bribes between 2007 and 2014 when he was vice governor under
this morning for alleged involvement in a 150,000 real a month bribery scheme during his tenure as vice governor under Sergio Cabral, who's also in jail right now on corruption charges. Now, this makes it 4 governors in the history of Rio de Janeiro who have ended up in jail.
Thank you, Brian, for that report. Scotiabank is defending its decision to exit some markets in the Caribbean. Senior Vice President Stephen Bangarol said the Caribbean is integral to the bank's overall operations and is just a refocus on market scale. He adds that the bank will still be servicing 90% of the Caribbean
and the Eastern Caribbean territories, including Grenada, at the purchase price.
A U.S. grand jury will convene on Friday to decide whether or not police officer Amber Geiger will be indicted for the fatal shooting of St. Lucia national Boham John. Geiger fatally shot the 20-year-old inside his Dallas apartment in September. She claimed she thought she was entering her own home and mistook John for a burglar. Telesur continues to expand its presence throughout the Caribbean region. It's hoping the signal will soon be available in St. Lucia and St. Kitts and Nevis. President Patricia Villegas held talks with the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Timothy Harris.
Work together to see how Telesur can assist us in our efforts at integration, in our efforts at promoting our country, beautiful touristic country, in assisting us in sharing our culture with the rest of the world, and importantly, as the integration efforts lead to people from Spanish-speaking and other regions into St. Kitts and Nevis to help us to make them feel more at home by being able to have a wide range of offerings, of communication channels in which they can see themselves, express themselves, hear themselves, and hear others of their own nationalities, their own cultural backgrounds, hear them and be part of the world in which they live. We see significant education benefits from Telesur, communication benefits, touristic benefits for all of our people. And again, we think that this will help the people of the region to live together more peacefully, more progressively. And so it is all good news from our perspective here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Venezuela's Vice Foreign Minister Raúl Licausi was also on the trip.
We are very happy to have such a successful work visit in Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts and Nevis. Yesterday we had meetings with Prime Minister Gaston Brown and Prime Minister Timothy Harris. We are here carrying out the agenda and the mandate that the ministers left for us during the last ALBA meeting, in which they demanded to continue with our work over the different councils of ALBA. We are covering a number of different issues, such as the incorporation into the ALBA Bank, the new economic and financial architecture that we work on for next year. We are very happy with these meetings. Greetings to President Maduro and the Venezuelan people.
We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The former lawyer of the U.S. President Donald Trump has pleaded guilty to lying to Congress. In a filing, prosecutors roll out a litany of lies, Cohen admitting he told lawmakers about the project to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Trump and his company had pursued the real estate project while he was running for election. Cohen's guilty plea is part of a new deal with special counsel Robert Mueller in the probe of Russia's interference in the 2016 election. As the world marks the International Day of Solidarity with Palestine, both the PLO and a government spokesperson have called on the international community to remember and act on the Palestinian situation. A member of the PLO's executive committee says the solidarity is not only an abstract expression of empathy, but an active commitment. On November 29, 1947, the UN approved the resolution to create a Jewish state and an Arab one. Palestinian political prisoners Ahmad Satari, who's 16 years old, and Saudi Farah, who's 15, were released on this day after spending 3 years in prison for crimes they did not commit. They were greeted by Palestinian activist Ahed Tamimi, who was there to receive them.
These 3 years are the most difficult in my life. Especially the first year is the most difficult time in being in jail. I was a child and I didn't know about the situation of being in jail. I faced a lot of problems in the beginning of my arrest, especially the interrogation. Mostly they're trying to brainwash us and they gave us medicine. The verbal abuse and the beatings. They beat Ahmed one day until we thought he was going to die. They beat me in the Russian compound. I was taking a bath and I was washing my clothes. I was naked and they kept me in the cold with the air conditioning on until I was so cold for over 6 hours. The military who takes the prisoners to and from the jail treat prisoners very bad.
Our correspondent in the Middle East, Nayara Tardo, gives us more details.
Palestine's resistance movement Hamas has condemned the support of the United States for Israel through a letter sent to the United Nations. The chief of political direction of Hamas condemned the U.S. proposal to name Hamas as a terrorist group. The United States is expected to present a document before the United Nations Assembly on Friday, if not on Monday, condemning the launch of strikes against Israel. Just last June, the United States had already proposed a similar document before the UN, which was not approved by the Security Council. Hamas's political chief also condemned the Israeli occupation of Palestine, the constant attacks on places which are sacred to Muslims in Jerusalem, and the demolition of Palestinian villages. A letter with these complaints was sent to the UN on the International Day of Solidarity with Palestine. The Day of Solidarity is celebrated each 29th of November. This year, the celebration comes at a critical moment when conflicts and uncertainties surround Palestine, especially related to the peace process and the deterioration of humanitarian and economic conditions in the Gaza Strip after attacks by Israel and confrontations between Hamas and the Israeli army.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.
Sentí el latido del corazón y me dejé llevar. Viví experiencias inolvidables. Sentí que estaba en otro planeta, donde nacen y se cruzan los caminos y el cielo se une con la tierra. Yo sé qué hace latir mi corazón. Bolivia.
Corazón del Sur.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
You're watching Telesur English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. These are the headlines at this hour. We start in Argentina, where a judge has ruled that activist Santiago Maldonado was not the victim of a forced disappearance. The federal judge said Maldonado drowned in the Chubut River in August of last year. He also dismissed all accusations against the police. But the family of Santiago Maldonado put out a statement after the ruling was announced. In it, the family says the judge in charge of the case had admitted to them that he was being blackmailed to acquit the police. The judge reportedly told them this just hours before he made the ruling. World leaders have been arriving in Buenos Aires, Argentina, for the G20 summit set to take place on Friday and Saturday. But the city has already seen a series of intense protests and a number of security breaches. Many protesters are still outraged by President Mauricio Macri's massive loan deal with the International Monetary Fund. Ahead of his arrival to the meeting, U.S. President Donald Trump has canceled his planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin because of Russia's naval conflict with Ukraine. Trump was expected to meet the Russian president at the G20 summit. As world leaders descend on Buenos Aires, left-wing organizations have gathered outside Congress for the People's Summit. The main goal of this counter-summit is to condemn the leaders of the G20 and International Monetary Fund So far, sessions of the People's Summit have discussed topics including feminism, LGBTQ rights, and youth policies.